Welcome back to the Lost Cause Ranch, and today is a very monumental day in the LR4. This is the future, meaning you're looking at an LR4 that has zero air in the suspension, and today we're going to show you just how we did that. That's right, this is 35-inch tires that are clearing with no air in an LR4. How'd we do that? Well, our buddies from Lucky 8 have an off-the-shelf solution for that. Well, not off-the-shelf for 35s. We obviously cut the back off and modified the front fender a little bit to make the 35s work, but a solution for ride height with oversized tires. We also got our rock sliders a little more secure today, which means we moved an air compressor because it was in the way. So I'm hoping today to get the final piece of our suspension sorted out in our quest to fit the 35-inch tires on this without creating a massive lift. And I got a example strut here. This is a front strut for an LR4. And what we're gonna do today is install the Lucky 8 SYA kit. This is a spacer that goes on top of the air strut, something like so. There's also a corresponding spacer that goes on the rear strut to do the same thing. And this does two things, or at least in my eyes, it does two things. It saves your donkey in case you have an air suspension failure. So the suspension is designed to still allow the vehicle to roll if it is completely aired down, at least with a stock tire size. But once you upgrade to say like a 32-inch or larger tire, if you have a complete failure of the air suspension on an LR4, it digs into the fender well, pops flares off if you have an issue. So these spacers don't allow the wheel to travel all the way up and give you the clearance you need in case of a failure like that. And a little later in the video, once everything's installed, you'll kind of get a better visual of what's going on there. But the thing I like the most is this has lift rods installed to trick the suspension into raising it. These add about 2.5 inches of lift, and I've been running these for years on this particular LR4, and we've ran LR3s and LR4s with these for a long time. These just trick the computer into thinking the suspension is at a different level than it is, roughly 2.5 inches higher at every setting. The only downfall with these is that lift is achieved by pumping more air into the air strut, making the strut longer. Makes sense. But when you pop more air into one of these, they ride stiffer. So if we space the strut back down from the top and account for that lift, this puts it back at close to the factory air setting or air pressures, and it's gonna ride like a factory LR4 once again. So in addition to the spacer, there's also a extended air line, because obviously if we're spacing this down, the factory line won't reach. And it includes that in the kit with a little quick coupler for when you chop the factory line to install it onto that. But then our spacers essentially just go on top. We run the nuts onto them. So there we have a ready to install strut. So essentially we just rinse and repeat that process for the other three. You do need to take the struts out to get those on top, just to get all the nuts into place. But not that big a deal, especially on this one because we don't have a rear body in the way. See, that's awful convenient to not have the body in the way. So I have the lower bolt undone, it's loose. We were able to swing it out. I like to leave that bolt in to get these cinched down just because it kind of holds the air strut in place. Then once we have these all tightened down, I'll undo this so we can drop this strut and swing it back in. With the extra space on top, or the spacer, it doesn't just kind of slot in without being removed. Gotta lower it, I'm too short to reach the top. And we'll torque that down when it's on the ground so the bushing is in the correct position, just less chance of tearing it. All right, so the other necessary thing when you're doing an SYA kit, and it comes with the SYA kit, is a set of limit straps. So there is a set for the front and the rear. This is obviously the rear one because we're working on the rear novel. But these don't let the suspension droop too far. So it kind of just allows it to droop to the factory level, because with the spacer installed and allowing it to full droop, you're gonna start messing up CV axles, especially up front when you're turning and bouncing off rocks and whatnot. The angle just becomes too great when you have it dropped all the way down. So these just keep that guy in check. So that completes the rear. We got both sides in, limit straps on. I guess we're not quite complete. We have to do our extensions. We'll probably cut these down and get our quick connector in there just so we don't have stuff hanging way out of line. But that looks pretty good. I think everything is sorted. We just need to tighten those down after the wheels are on. And we'll get the front all the way out, being we had that other one set up and ready to slot back in. Makes life slightly easier. It is warm as F today. I mean, that's the way it's been for quite some time now. It's just humid. All right, so we're all ready, front and rear. We have our air lines re-secured with our little quick connects. And speaking of quick connects, we're gonna need a bunch more of those, because next up is moving this guy. But we got that guy clipped in there and it tucks in nicely. The wheels are ready to go back on, but before we do that, I want to sort this out. I mean, I really wanna see how this sits with the 35s on it and no air, but that'll just have to wait a minute here, because there's no better time to do this than right now. So for these, we got a couple quick connects to get everything separated. Here we had a cut. We're gonna have to extend that. I believe that is feeding into the tank. But stuff's falling, still falling. We're kind of bunched up. There is our air compressor. Now I think we'll utilize the factory bracket and move that up to the rear diff area. There's no sense in reinventing this piece. I mean, I guess worst case scenario, maybe we'll just chop the bracket off there, being we won't need the height. Well, I guess let's get it off and see where we're sitting. I mean, I could talk about it all day, or I could just do it. Yeah, one way or another we'll use this guy. I'm thinking we may end up slicing that and just using the bottom portion. But that gives us a good starting point to get that thing moved up there. And it also gives us a nice clear area. So now we'll be able to tie the rear of this rock slider into the frame. It'd be awful nice if we had this same setup on the passenger side here, but we don't. So we'll come up with something. Probably do a similar thing to what we did for the upper support bars and weld a plate in with some bolts, or I guess the plate would have nuts, and we'll fashion something up. So I think what we're gonna aim for is placing the air compressor right on top of the rear diff here. And everything underneath there, I think that is the best location without moving to behind everything. I'd like to leave this open for future use. So I pulled a couple bolts out of the side of the differential here, and I think we're gonna make a plate that mounts to the side, sit about there. with a T across. Slice that off the back, make it all work. And looking at this, man, we're gonna have some stripping to do to clean up the rear of the chassis. We already did the front before the cab went back on. But yeah, there's gonna be a lot of wire wheeling and cleaning up. We'll have to unbolt some stuff, some new hardware. Oh, fun stuff. Gotta love a 4-season vehicle in the Midwest. I mean, you don't have to, but I guess I have to. All right, so we got a little arts and crafts going on here. I'm just roughing out a template to go there. Got a little more trimming to do just to dial it in. So I think that's pretty close to what we need. We're using thinner cardboard so we can just kind of impression the hole. And those guys are right about there. And there. We'll clean the edges up a little bit, but I think that is the ticket. And then we'll have something like this guy right across the top. And that'll be the piece that we use to bolt this plate to. So we're just gonna trace this over. Then we'll just get over to the bandsaw and chop these guys out. So we got the bracket made up and it actually bolts in. We also have our top plate drilled out. We just need to weld that across. Then we'll chop this guy down, punch a few holes in the back. I think that should actually work out pretty nice in there. It's tucked nice and low, but it is also going to be protected from anything coming from underneath. All right, so everything is all made up to mount the compressor. We just need to bolt these two pieces together, and it's just gonna go something like so. All right, now we can mount this guy. So something like that. This is kind of cumbersome to do when it's not all bolted down. Jesus. This is going great. Well, the washer fell somewhere. I mean, knowing my luck, it would have rolled all the way past the cardboard and into the drain. All right, get this guy into place. So our plate is nice and secure. Compressor can still bounce around and not vibrate everything. We'll just have to run down to our local hose and hydraulics store and get the correct size tube and connectors so we can plumb this back into the intake. So this goes to that guy. This one goes to the one underneath. That guy we're gonna have to switch over. We'll flip him like that. Cut it there, run a line over and this will go back to the valve block that fills the tank. And we just need to extend this harness and this harness to reach that. And where'd that one go? This one. That actually should work out pretty slick. It's gonna sit under there nicely. We're sitting low and it's not gonna go anywhere. I like that. That'd be a good place for it, but it's too bad that there's typically a body in the way. Weirdly enough, we don't have that problem on this one though. And now that we got the compressor out of the way, we can go ahead and put our mounting plate down here for the rocker. I guess not rocker, rock slide. Yeah, we'll just kind of buzz this guy in and then work from there. So we'll take another length of DOM and run it down to that plate we just bolted on there and weld that out. So we need to cut this at an angle and then cope this side. And if you see what we got going on here, we're gonna have a little bit of a downward angle to try and triangulate it as much as we can while staying above the bottom of the frame rail. And that'll tie everything together and that should stiffen up this rear and it should be pretty solid after that. It's all right at this point, but not to drop down onto a ledge or a rock. It'll bend up and mess the cab up. So we got our angle cut there. So now we just need to hold the camera with my legs and mark out . So we'll just make sure we are square. Double check that. So that is tacked on and we will test that once we get it outside and see. But I think that should stiffen this up quite a bit. I still would like to triangulate it somehow, or at least a little more triangulation, but I don't know if that's possible. I think once we tie a skid plate in and get it fully welded out, this should be sufficient. We'll see though. But now we just need to get everything cleaned up and get the wheels back on and see how that SYA kit worked out. Hopefully we have enough clearance with zero air. That is the goal. I did the math, so it could be wildly off. All right, now here is the moment of truth. There is zero air in the truck because there can't be, because the air compressor isn't hooked up. I think we are golden, but let's get it pulled out. I love it when a plan comes together. This is completely aired out. There is no air at all in the system. And with our body mounts back into place, the clearance is perfect on the bed. We got about a finger, that's what I wanted. Just wanted it to almost touch. Then up front, we have plenty of room to clear with turning and everything. So if this thing has a fault, we'll at least have a shot at driving it off the trail or on the road. It'll be bouncy, but it's not gonna dig in and leave us completely stranded. It's not gonna be fun, but it's not gonna leave us stranded. And this is considerably better than it was before. I mean, even with my overweightness right now, speaking of which, I should get back to training, but that stiffened that up quite a bit. We still may play with more, but we'll see what it's like once everything's all welded out. Because remember, it's just lightly welded there, not completely welded out on the rocker, and not completely bolted in. And then I see no issues with where the air compressor is at the moment. Plenty of clearance all the way around it. And I even slid one of the toolboxes in place, and we have clearance against the front of the tire. So everything is just the way we want it. And that SYA kit made life quite a bit easier. Now, normally I like building things, but the value with that is just too good. It's not worth the time. This wasn't an advertisement for that or anything, but it just solved the problem that we had without a whole lot of work and at a decent value. I'm super happy with that, and this thing is coming along pretty well. We can just keep finishing stuff off. Next up is going to be sorting out the modules back here. They're going to get mounted along that, and then we can get the seats bolt back in, get ourselves an exhaust built, then actually test this thing out. Yes, it is that close to driving now. I mean, there's a little bit to do here, but minor stuff. So with that being said, appreciate you guys watching, appreciate you subscribing, and we will catch you on the next one. On the truck, like I said, it's going to be modules, finishing that stuff out, getting the compressor fired off, and then I don't know what next week's day in the life will be. Hopefully we'll be moving some of our junk on that one.